evening and welcome back to another episode of the NAACP Chicago Westside branch. I am your host, Tara Levy, and joining you all again on this lovely Friday. So, a lot has been going on lately with the beautiful city of Chicago. So let's talk about it. CPS strike continues for the 6th day. Chicago Teacher Union, CPS workers, all have been up in arms for just over a school week. So what does that do for our children? What does that do for teachers? Like, how does that affect us? How does that affect our community? How does that affect our students at large? As a teacher, I definitely can feel the pains of the CPS workers. While I'm not at a Chicago public school, I am at a charter school, and some of the issues that they have stated I also can relate to. But before we jump into that, I want to take a quick look at a video. As of last night, there's been an update on the Chicago Teacher Union strike and CPS strike. So let's take that out before we get into it.
Chicago teachers say that while negotiators are making some progress at the bargaining table, it's just not enough. Meanwhile, the school district says the strike is costing students the academic progress it's made in recent years. Brandis Friedman has been following this story. Brandis, where are we today with everything?
So, Paris, today I'm hearing from some principals who are actually panicked about the PSAT tests being rescheduled for next week. Not only do students lose out on potential scholarship opportunities if they miss this test, but also the practice of just taking the test as well as getting some baseline data for themselves. So if students don't take the PSAT before November 1st, they could miss out on applying for national merit scholarships. What's more, the schools in the district have already paid for the test, which is now scheduled for Wednesday, October 30th. That's about $10,000 to $12,000 at a couple of high schools whose principals I spoke with. That's just the 9th and 10th grade. The district pays the cost for high school juniors. Today, Chief Education Officer LaTanya McDade said this strike cannot go into next week because of the impact it's having on students. And we're not sure if it will at this point. We do know the CTU House of Delegates, which has the authority to call off the strike, could be meeting tomorrow.
If we call a meeting for tomorrow, it will be to update our members on bargaining progress. These guys will be the first to know if we think we're there. I am not seeing that at this moment.
And what did CTU say about the progress with negotiations?
So today the union really emphasized the need for staffing, particularly for special education, more teachers, more assistants, and more case managers.
I have 20 students on my caseload. I have 15 students at one time in front of me by myself. I'm supposed to have an assistant with me. I don't.
Currently, I have 170 special ed IEPs on my caseload alone. I have to schedule meetings. I have to talk to parents. I have to answer phone calls. I have to do everything on my own. I cannot get it all done.
There's no real mechanism to ensure that our educators have an avenue to advocate for their students without retaliation.
The union says today they updated special education teachers and staffers, the folks you see here demonstrating, of course, on the wins that they have made at the bargaining table, but that the district still hasn't come far enough to meet their demands on adequate staffing to reduce the workloads you just heard some teachers referring to, and reducing the amount of paperwork they're required to do, especially without enough staff. Altogether, they say it adds up to students not getting the services they need and are required by law. But even today, the mayor reiterated that the union still has not responded to a number of proposals they've been given. To that, the union says they do plan on responding to those proposals, but what the city has given them has been inadequate thus far.
And Brandis, what are parents saying about all this back and forth?
So, of course, there are still plenty of parents who support the Chicago Teachers Union and the strike. But, I spoke with one parent. She has 3 daughters, all of whom have special needs, what CPS calls diverse learners. Only 2 of her children, though, are still in CPS. And between the defunding problems of 2016 that led to the state takeover of the CPS special education program and now this strike, she's frustrated to say the least and wants to see more from CTU.
I feel like this mayor needs to be given a chance. I don't feel like, from what I've seen, I don't feel like that olive branch has been given to her to be able to show what she's made of. I feel like my children are being held hostage, but I don't hear anything about the measures that are going to be put in there for accountability of your members.
All right, let's pause there. And before we go into a further discussion, I want to dive into some of the terminology that they use. A lot of the teachers talked about IEPs. As a special educator myself, I know what an IEP is, but for those who are just general public, you may not know what an IEP is. An IEP is an individualized educational plan for an exceptional learner. So what we mean by exceptional learner, that's a student who may have an emotional, an intellectual, academic disability. So they may have some difficulties in learning as the general education peer might. So that's what an IEP is. And it takes a really long time to write an IEP, an individualized education plan. And some of the special educators who spoke in that film talked about like this, the strain it was to write a whole bunch of IEPs in a short amount of time. So imagine if it takes you about an average of about maybe 3 hours to write an IEP. And if you have 20 members on your caseload, so 20 exceptional educational learners on your caseload, that's a lot of IEPs to write. That's 20 IEPs to write, along with having the responsibilities of lesson planning and then other responsibilities of a teacher. So that can be taxing in itself. And teacher burnout is not just unique to CPS. I think teacher burnout is a common thing throughout the world. Teachers get paid adequately, but we still feel tired. I don't think there's enough money in the world to replace how you feel at the end of the day when you're constantly being picked and pulled out of different directions. Imagine that nursery rhyme of the little lady who lived in a shoe, had so many children, know what to do. Well, that's how we as teachers may feel sometimes, especially when you're dealing with students with high academic needs and you have very little support. Teachers who have self-contained classrooms typically should have smaller classroom sizes to deal with the high needs of their students. But if they have classroom sizes that are like the same or comparable to the general education, they may feel overwhelmed. It looks like we have a caller. Caller, what's going on?
Ma'am. My name is Joseph Rome. I have some problem with some of these IEPs. And we look at some of them. Why should it take like years to bring a child up to the level they should be? Why not, if they had to go to summer school or do some things on the weekend or get an additional type of help where things could be turned around within months instead of years? And then there's another problem. You got some parents that want their children to have this disability so they can get Social Security. And I just got some problems with it. Why should it take years when it should be like months?
Thank you, caller. Thank you, Joseph. Very provoking question. So why does it take years to get students caught up? So I'm going to paint the picture for you. I am a teacher of exceptional learners at a high school. At a high school. So I'm going to reiterate that. So when you're in high school, the majority of your formative years have already passed. What I mean by that, you've experienced elementary school, you've experienced middle school, all before you come into my classroom. So those foundational principles that should have been established those years before you got here were not. So say if you're in 10th grade, I have 10th graders. Say you're in 10th grade and you're reading at like maybe a 3rd grade level. Yes, ideally, I would want you to get from that 3rd grade level to your current grade level of 10th grade and then eventually pursue 11th grade level so you could be ready for the next school year. But if you don't have the makings of that principle or those principles that were missed, it's pretty hard to catch up on. So what we do for IEPs, we write goals that are ambitious. Ambitious mean that yes, it may be hard to get, but if we actually put in that effort, both as a special educator and that student also puts in that effort, we can maybe get you up 2 grade levels. So instead of being 7 grade levels behind, maybe we can close that gap to make it 5. Unfortunately, that just isn't the case always. Some students at this point say they are at 10th grade and they feel like they're behind. They internalize that and they lose hope. They lose the motivation to actually do the work. And I've seen that time and time again. And I notice when students feel that they are so far behind, you have to just motivate them. You have to give them those praises about, hey, thank you for doing this. I see that you were doing this correctly. Like, give them that shine, give them that shout out to re-energize them and reintegrate them back into the classroom. So thank you, caller. The phone line is open. I'm definitely open for questions, comments, concerns. Tell me how you're feeling about the strike. Are you affected by the strike? If you're a CPS teacher, parent, or even student, how is this affecting you? What are some thoughts that you want to share? Call now at 312-738-1060. Okay, so back to the clip we just saw. A lot of teachers are feeling the burnout and not feeling supported because their classrooms are just over capacity. When you feel like your classrooms are not serving the students that you are trying to serve, that's something that you take home with. That's something that feeds into your soul. I also can relate to that. So a lot of issues with feeling that the students are not being served because of the lack of resources seems to be a theme for the CPS workers and the CTU union. Now, my question is, yes, it's important that teachers rally together and support each other during these hard times, but how is this time away from school impacting our kids? How is this time out of class impacting that 10th grader who was already 7 grade levels behind? What is she doing? What is he doing during this time? So I think it's important that we check in with these CPS students as well to see how they are impacted by this. Maybe school was a time where you were able to get a healthy breakfast and a healthy lunch on a daily basis. And now that you don't have that, you may not have those two resources. So I think we also should empathize with our teachers, but also check in on these students. Are there programs during the day? Are there centers during the day that young people can go to be fed, to be nurtured, and to actually do something productive with their time? Because we know that an idle mind is a playground for the devil. So, meaning, not saying our kids are up to no good, but we know that school is a time of just rigor. It's a time that kids have that safe being, that time that's consistent for them. So if up out of the blue, they're out of school, what are our kids doing now? Again, you can call in at 312-738-1060. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the latest with the CPS strike and CTU union. At this time, I would like to talk about my experiences both going to school in Chicago and now teaching in Chicago. I actually have never been a CPS student. I attended Providence St. Mel. It's a private school on the Westside in Garfield Park for 12 years. And it wasn't until I actually became an educator of exceptional learners that I actually saw the struggle in having class sizes that were over capacity. At Providence St. Mel, our school was actually under-enrolled, but because it was funded by a private sector, we didn't have the lack of resources that a lot of under-enrolled schools now are facing. So that is a privilege of mine that I was never able to really understand the struggle of it until I saw it as a teacher. So I just think about how do the kids feel knowing that their schools are under-enrolled, full and not resourced. How do they feel about that? Even kids as young as 7 or 8, I'm pretty sure that they are mindful of some of these things that are happening. We would be surprised just of how aware our young people can be. Because if they know that something isn't right, they can feel it. They can feel it in their classrooms, they can feel it and get a sense of it from their teachers as well. So I'm curious to see who has access to these people, these young people who are not in school. Who knows what they are doing? I know Gary Comer Youth Center on the South Side, they have some resources for those neighboring schools who are out currently due to the strike. And there are also some art programs in Holman Square at the Holman Tower for those neighboring schools who are also on strike. I just think that it's important that we as educators are supported, CPS teachers are supported and get the resources that they need, but also that we don't keep our kids even further behind as we're trying to figure out what's going on in the mix. All right, we have about 10 minutes left of our show. I want to continue on with this discussion, and I also want to drop a little gem. We're talking about young people. We're talking about the importance of having resources. The NAACP every year sponsors the AXO competition. What the AXO is, it's a competition in which young people in grades 9 through 12 are able to compete with children all around Chicago and eventually the nation. We have our kickoff event next Saturday at the Columbus Park Reflectory. Here's more information about it. AXO includes a talent showcase for both STEM, so science, technology, and mathematics, humanities, the performing arts, visual arts, entrepreneurship, and culinary arts. Again, this is sponsored by the Chicago Westside NAACP. We'll be holding our kickoff event next Saturday at the Columbus Park Fieldhouse, 500 South Central Avenue at 10 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. So for those who are interested and have young people in their lives, children, grandchildren, know of any students, please spread the word. Please bring them. And even if you're just a parent or guardian who's interested, you are welcome to attend the session as well. And I'll leave this up on the screen for a few more seconds. And I'll go to our Facebook. This is the lovely NAACP and their members. See that we're constantly having very cool events happening. Again, our next kickoff will be this coming, not this Saturday, but the next coming Saturday, November 2nd. For more information, contact Carol Haynes Page at 312-217-7378. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, I do want to wrap up with the invitation. An invitation to support CPS students, support CPS workers in their strive for educational equity. It's important that students and teachers both feel served, both feel that their needs are being met, because no one wants to go to a place where they feel tired and burned out every day. That's unfair to the people who are working, the children who are being served and who are learning. As I wrap up, as always, you are welcome to attend our general body meetings. Next Saturday, we have our first general body meeting of the fall term. That'll be at 5820 West Chicago Avenue, starting at 1 p.m. 5820 West Chicago Avenue is the Sankofa. There's a brown awning if you see, if you've ever been there. We have our first general body meeting of the fall term. Guests are welcome to attend. Community members are welcome to attend. Those who are interested in being more politically active and aware are welcome to attend. Well, thank you, viewers. This has been another episode of the Chicago NAACP Westside Branch. I'm your host, Tara Levy, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.